If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that.
That was a speech that launched the infamous "you didn't build that" faux controversy of the 2012 presidential campaign. The president's contention that it takes more than one individual's hard work to succeed in America was seized upon, spun around, and answered by Republicans who cast it as an attack on small business owners everywhere and spent the rest of the campaign sloganeering around it. Well, in the second installment of his interview with Bill O'Reilly last night, the president was seen gently suggesting that maybe on his way to fame and fortune, Bill O'Reilly might have gotten a little bit of help from government policy somewhere along the way. And Bill O'Reilly was having none of it.
I think that you are much more friendly to a nanny state than I am. I'm more of a self-reliance guy. You're more of a big government will solve your problems guy.
During his sit-down with President Obama, Bill O'Reilly brought out one of his more famous themes. He's a self-made man, and those who don't subscribe to his political philosophy are looking for a handout. The president took issue with that.
You and I took advantage of certain things. I don't know about you, but I got some loans to go to college.
No, I painted houses. I didn't get any. That's why I am.
I painted houses during the summer too. It still wasn't enough.
As Bill O'Reilly will be the first to tell you, the place that made him is Levittown, New York.
Nowhere else on this planet could a wise guy from Levittown, with no uncle in the business, no social skills at all, I'm sure you'd agree, kiss nobody's butt ever, rise up and command the position that I command. That couldn't happen in Switzerland. It couldn't happen in Japan. It happens in America.
And though it might come as a shock to Bill O'Reilly, Levittown is a creation of government policy. In the suburban post-war boom, Long Island's Levittown was the idyllic model.
Back in 1950, it was easier to buy the middle-class life. Levittown, New York was the first of the mass-produced suburban communities, complete with something called shopping centers.
But Levittown wasn't created by God. It was created by a lot of hardworking people, a few smart developers, and federal housing policy. After the war, returning GIs were looking for affordable homes to start their adult lives. Among them was World War II veteran Eugene Burnett, who, in a 2003 PBS documentary, explained what happened to him and his wife when they tried to buy a house in Levittown.
I went up to the salesman. We're interested in your home. We're interested in buying one. And what is the procedure? Is there an application to be filled out? So forth. So he looked at me, looked around, and he said to me, he says, "Listen, it's not me, but the owners of this development have not as yet decided to sell these homes to Negroes."
The FHA underwriters warned that the presence of even one or two non-white families could undermine real estate values in the new suburbs. These government guidelines were widely adopted by private industry.
The point is, discriminatory federal policies, like those of the Federal Housing Administration, helped build the wealth in America's suburbs, and they also helped build the poverty in America's ghettos. And it only started to end in 1968 with the passage of the Fair Housing Act. Now let's be clear. This doesn't take anything away from the grit, determination, and hard work of Bill O'Reilly, or anyone who came out of Levittown, or any of the other countless suburbs across America. We are all standing on a scaffolding of laws and government policy that is so massive that it feels like the ground. This isn't some kind of speculation, it's documented. In 2008, a Cornell poll asked people whether they had ever used a government social program. 57% of people said no. As political scientist Suzanne Mettler writes, 94% of those who denied using a government program had benefited from at least one. The average respondent had used 4. There are two types of people in America: those who recognize that they're standing on top of something built to help them, and those who believe they are naturally giants.
When we come back, I'll talk about those two types of people with two other people, my MSNBC colleague Alex Wagner and Diedrich Mohammed from the NAACP. So stay with us. Joining me now, as promised, my MSNBC colleague Alex Wagner, host of Now, which airs weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, and Diedrich Mohammed, Senior Director of the NAACP Economic Department. So there's something really important and profound in that exchange, because that belief. I mean, the president was trying to kind of like meet him halfway and be like, hey, look, we've all benefited, right? It's like, no, not me. And that is a widespread belief. I mean, that is a really widespread belief in America. Like, I got here, I got mine, I worked hard for it, and no one gave me a handout. I mean, you hear that all the time. No one gave me a handout.
Yeah, I feel like the conservatives and the Bill O'Reillys of the world have locked down the states part, but not the united part. I mean, it's like we have lost the sense of the collective effort. And the president is now prone to, as he has, on the campaign trail in 2012 and in State of the Unions before that, talking about these programs like the internet or the man on the moon, right, or the Hoover Dam, things that never would have happened unless we had all worked together. And it's weird to me that it's like it bears sort of evidential, you have to have sort of a litany of like how the government functions and has worked for us as a country in this day and age, given how far we've come together.
But it's also like welfare is the thing the other person gets. It's like the definition of rich is someone who has more money than you, right? Yep. It's like welfare is the stuff the other. I mean, you have Stephen Fincher from Tennessee, Republican congressman, literally quoting the Bible: "If you don't work, you don't eat," while he is getting money in farm subsidies. Yeah. The same person, and it's like, hello.
Well, and the fact that that he's from Levittown.
You're talking about Bill O'Reilly now.
Bill O'Reilly. Going back to Bill O'Reilly, and that is known for being a massive government program that gave exclusively whites. I mean, the fact that he's talking to the first black president of the United States and talking about how generally African Americans aren't making it because of their own personal failures, he says later in that interview, and he's acting like, I've got nothing. But you had this massive program where there's no down payments for home ownership, like $60 a month. That was
literally the federal housing administration backstop mortgages and subsidize them for white people to buy homes. That was official government policy. That was it.
Absolutely. And he takes that as, see, I did it all myself.
Right. And it's a bigger problem, though, than Bill O'Reilly. Sure. That's why I think there's this idea, one political scientist that we quoted in there talks about the submerged state, and she did this great research. She says, well, have you used a government program, right? And all these people say no. So people who report never having used a government program, right, 57%. So actually people who have not used a government program is 4%. But then if you look at the different kinds of government programs, the more submerged it is, the less likely. So if you're on food stamps, right, people know that's a government program, right? Yeah. Only 25% of people say I haven't gotten a federal program. If you look at unemployment insurance, 43%. The home mortgage deduction, okay? 60% of people getting the home mortgage deduction, which is just another way of the government writing you a check. I hate to tell you this. It's just the government writing you a check. 60% are like, I haven't used a government program.
Yeah, well, but I think part of it, Chris, and you can look to today to the passage of the Farm Bill, is the goalposts have been moved so far right when it comes to government and earned benefit programs. I mean, even we've talked about this. The use of the word entitlement programs connotes some sort of like fraudulent, bad behavior. And today I was talking with Debbie Stabenow on the program, and she talked about how they'd cut out fraud and abuse of the home heating program so that people on SNAP could get more money for food assistance. And the fact that Democrats are now using the word fraud and abuse to describe people who have run out of money and are living at the federal poverty line, who are trying to get enough money to eat, as somehow that is bad, asocial, fraudulent behavior, is a testament to how far right we've gone nationally in terms of the conversation.
No one ever is going to look for fraud and abuse in the home mortgage deduction.
Yes.
No one. I forget how many billions of dollars in this country we spend on the home mortgage deduction for second homes, okay? But no state legislator, no one's ever going to be like, drug tests. If you want to take the home mortgage deduction, you should have a drug test.
And people don't look at there's massive investments in wealth building that disproportionately goes to richer people, like the mortgage interest deduction. And that's why we have such a weak middle class today, because we used to invest more, even though it's racially exclusive, in Levittowns for working class people. Now most of our investments for asset development is for higher income people.
That's right. The interview itself, take a step back, I just was like, what are you doing? Why is this happening? That was my response to the interview. Like, who sits there across from the President of the United States and says, you're a nanny state guy. Yeah. This is the kind of guy I am. Like, what?
It takes, like, what? I don't even think cojones is, like, the appropriate. It's like hubris, and it is a lack of self-awareness to sit there across from a man who was raised with no father, whose mother was, like, died of cancer before he became president, who really is president for no reason other than his own sort of self-starter attitude about the world. And say, oh, you're a nanny state guy.
Yeah, that's right. And I made all my greatness myself.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, the issue isn't really Bill. I mean, Bill O'Reilly is easy to kind of laugh at, but the problem is many people really buy into this philosophy, and it's having really negative effects on policy. I mean, right now they're redoing how mortgages are being financed, and there's a lot of discussion about that, and there's a lot of talk about, well, home ownership isn't for everybody. Well, what do you mean by everybody? Like, the majority of whites, 70% are homeowners. Only 40% of blacks and Latinos are homeowners. We need to strengthen home ownership if we're going to make this a society where everybody really can participate in the middle class.
But here's the thing. 100 million people watch Super Bowl. Like, people were watching that. It's like, here America. It was just like one of these, like, amazing, like, injections into the bloodstream, right? Where it's like, here America is every little, like, right-wing conspiracy theory people have been chasing for the whole last year. Benghazi, the IRS is corrupt. Like, oh, you wanted to watch a football game?
Yeah.
Oh, check it out. Let me give you a little bit of, like, red state comment threads real quick while you're, like, eating your Doritos before you watch the kickoff.
And can you imagine if the same thing had happened on the left? If someone had decided to talk about, you know, environmental policy or renewable energy or anything relating to this sort of social compact?
Because we do not live in that world. Let's all just take a moment to recognize the world we live in which Fox, owned by Rupert Murdoch, has the Super Bowl, and there's an interview with one of his employees. Like, that's the world we live in. That's the world we live in. Dietrich Mohammed from the NAACP, Alex Wagner. You can catch her show, as I always do, every day, weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, here on MSNBC. Don't laugh, I do.
And I love you for it.
Thank you both. That is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now in this room, and I'm going to shut up.
I don't mind. Here, I'll talk now. You talk in the corner.
No.
See? We're all one big happy family watching Alex at 4 and talking in the same studio.
Very quiet.
Thank you very much.